a very good evening once again to everyone. On behalf of TiE Ahmedabad, TiE Coimbatore, and TiE Nagpur, I extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed speakers today, Dr. Rizwan Ahmed and Mr. Arsh Shah, the presidents of the three chapters: Ahmedabad President Saurabh Mehta, Nagpur President Mr. Nitin Sachdeva, and Ms. Ranjana Singhal, President of TiE Coimbatore. All our TiE members, associates, friends, and family who have joined here for the 6th edition of Impact Speaker Series. And I'm very happy and delighted to see that we have, people attending from all across the country. This series is aimed to focus on the key aspects like maybe market trends, challenges, changing scenarios, something new that's coming up and is probably going to become a more important part of the future. So continuing with this core objective, today's session will certainly help us with the insights and learnings that will be shared by the industry leaders today. We have included most of the questions that we had received from you for the speakers' discussion and the talk. Any additional questions, if you have, I'll be requesting you to put it on the chat box. Once the talk of our speakers is over, we will have enough time for the interactions and we can take those additional questions at that point of time. Thank you. Over to you, Swati.
Thanks, Piali. Before we go further, I'd like to give a brief introduction about our speakers for the session today. Dr. Rizwan Ahmed has over 2 decades of professional experience and is currently the Chief Technology Officer at DeltaFlex, headquartered in Atlanta. He has offices in London and throughout India, including Pune, Nagpur, Mumbai, and Hyderabad and Bangalore. And about Mr. Arsh Shah, he holds a degree in computer science and has been working on blockchain since 2017, prior to which he built derivative trading systems at Morgan Stanley. Currently, he is at Protocol Labs and is working on the Philcon protocol for decentralization data storage. He is passionate about blockchains and crypto and loves educating about blockchain movement so that it gains more traction and adoption. I welcome Dr. Rizwan and Mr. Arsh Shah. I also would like to welcome the presidents of the 3 chapters, Mr. Nitin Sachdeva, President TiE Nagpur, Mr. Saurabh Mehta, TiE Ahmedabad, and Ms. Ranjana Singhal, President TiE Coimbatore. Welcome, presidents, and thank you for supporting us through this Impact Speaker Series. Without any further delay, over to you, Mr. Sachdeva.
Thank you so much, Swati. It's an honor to be here amongst great participants. I saw some enthusiasm from the speakers, from the participant side with some good questions coming in. So without wasting much of the time, I would straight away call upon Rizwan. Rizwan, can we have an interaction first with you?
Yes, Nitin, good evening and thanks for having me here.
Dr. Rizwan Ahmed and myself, we are working together since long, but still I would request Rizwan to briefly, if you can speak something about you and your key skills about touching the blockchain technology and your expertise.
Thank you, Nitin. I think during the introduction session about me, I've been part of this IT industry journey for 2 decades. And as far as me and Nitin together goes, we started DeltaFlex around 2008, and it has been a great journey so far. We have worked on a variety of technologies, mostly emerging technologies that includes artificial intelligence, machine learning, supply chain technologies, blockchain, and other emerging technologies. So it has been a great journey so far. I have been very, very fortunate to be involved in many complicated and excited projects while working with most of our enterprise clients all around the globe. And that's how DeltaFlex has grown over a period of time. And I'm very happy the kind of progress and the kind of contribution we at DeltaFlex are able to make as a technology company, building many digital products, innovative products throughout the world.
Great, Rizwan. That was just to tell the participants that you are going to talk about technology. So coming to our fireside chat round, I would ask you to explain how blockchain has evolved over the years.
Sure. I think blockchain is a very, very frontier technology which we are seeing everywhere, and that continues to evolve and keeps maturing more every day. That is something we keep happening every day, and every new innovations, new technologies are coming around blockchain, including other things which are surrounding it. Some of the experts even say that blockchain is going to be it's going to be changing everything that internet has done so far. That is something we all need to be fascinated about, and that's where we talk about decentralized web. More popularly we call it as web 3.0, and this is where we are going to be making everything which is going to be people powered internet, which is going to be a reality soon. Some of you might remember the famous dialogue from a web series which happened very recently. The most expensive thing in the world is the trust. I'm not sure if some of you remember that dialogue, right? And that has come across that web series several times. I'm talking about Scam 1992, the Harshad Mehta story. I think we have a lot of financial experts here, including Nitin, right? So I feel if blockchain could have been invented around that time, right, and they could have used blockchain for managing BR and SGL, the relevant scams which are happened around those time might not have happened. That's what I feel. And that's how blockchain has evolved over a period of time, because trust is essential to our society. As humans, we are wired to trust one another. Society can't function without trust, and that is where we try to ensure that the trust works between all of us all the time. But what is happening now is trust is a huge issue when we do things online, especially in digital world. And that is when people started thinking about how to build trust in digital world, and they came up with the idea of maybe utilizing different technologies which internet has created, and they created a new trust model which facilitates this business and consumer interaction or trusting model between each other. So in summary, blockchain is that kind of trust model which helps us to do that trustworthiness between us, act as no intermediary between us, right? And do everything what we can do in a traditional world in the digital world also. So a lot of collaboration is happening as far as data sharing with blockchain is considered. We are creating really different multi-party systems in a more collaborative way. And this system is evolving day by day. And the journey of blockchain started way back in year 2008, wherein a white paper was conceptualized by a pseudonym called as Satoshi Nakamoto, wherein he published a paper which is called as Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And all of you, as we heard during the initial interaction, there is huge maybe interest around Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Everyone wants to use them, maybe invest in them and things like that. But one thing we need to remember is the blockchain ecosystem is just not about cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin. It is way more than that. So in summary, blockchain is a system which could record information in any way, which was not possible in past. And more importantly, we do it in a way so that it is shared with everyone, and it is difficult and impossible to change. And more importantly, people cannot hack or cheat the system. And that's how the structure is created, wherein you have a lot of transactions happening, which are called as blocks. And we are basically storing that information in a database. And these blocks are connected to each other. And that's why we use term blockchain, wherein we have multiple blocks which are connected to each other. So in simplest term, we are building a digital ledger using blockchain. And this digital ledger is helping us to maybe maintain all the different kinds of information which we need to conduct our business all the time. So in maybe if I need to talk in simplest word, digital ledger, which is built using blockchain, could be similar to Google spreadsheet. So if I share a spreadsheet with everyone, that spreadsheet, the content in the spreadsheet is accessible to everyone. People can make changes to it, and that happens simultaneously. Bigger difference between this distributed ledger technology or blockchain technology is it is something which is helping us to do this in a more decentralized way. We have more trust which comes into picture, and there is a lot of opportunities around blockchain technologies in terms of the use cases in which blockchain technology is being applied from medicine to finance, supply chain, healthcare, I can go on. So basically, we are creating a decentralized, trustless blockchain technology solutions, which are giving us different opportunities, different benefits to our businesses, and more importantly, it is bringing in greater transparency, enhanced security, and easier traceability to identify who did some transaction and why they did and things like that. So there is huge opportunity around blockchain, and that's where everyone is trying to adopt blockchain technology in their businesses.
Great, Vizran. Thanks for that background. We all know that entrepreneurs across the world are using information technology to scale their processes and their businesses. So how, as per you, the blockchain technology is helping the entrepreneurs scale, and what progress you see for the use of blockchain as a technology across industries, not just IT, today and in the future?
Absolutely, there is huge potential as far as blockchain goes. As I already said, blockchain is even going to surpass our internet, and maybe we are going to be creating Web 3.0 utilizing blockchain and other technologies. There are a lot of surveys around blockchain technology usage. So some of the surveys I would like to quote here. There is a huge research company by name CB Insights. According to them, blockchain solutions are going to be utilized for around $16 billion by 2023. And another firm, PwC, according to them, it has potential to generate almost $3 trillion in revenue by 2030. So that shows how much potential we have across different industries and how blockchain would be embraced across different industries. And there are many businesses right now which are kind of facing problem of embracing blockchain, wherein they need help from experts, especially from different IT companies who have expertise in blockchain technologies, so that they can look at the business use case the relevant startup is having, or maybe relevant enterprise is having, and they want to identify whether they can utilize blockchain and maybe implement blockchain in their own use case, and maybe make better benefits of blockchain technology in their use case. But what happens is most of these people face a lot of challenges because blockchain technology is very, very sophisticated sometimes. That requires a lot of technical expertise, more from the perspective of integration. At times, most of these startups or companies, they don't have in-house technical expertise who are well versed in this arena, who understand blockchain that well, so that they can implement those solutions in their use cases. So that's where roles of IT experts, IT companies come into picture, who want to basically utilize their blockchain expertise and help these companies adopt blockchain in their use cases, so that they can do their businesses easily without disruption of their daily processes in terms of what they're trying to do. And more importantly, the apprehension what these businesses or these startups at times have, wherein if they make investment, maybe a lot of funds are invested in doing development in this technology, which is still disruptive in nature, that there are a lot of unknowns. So they still have some kind of fear, right? If we do this, what is going to happen, right? So in that case, at times it is suggested that they should engage with certain people who are blockchain experts, as well as IT companies who are having expertise here. And utilizing them, they should create some kind of proof of concepts around blockchain before they do huge investments and maybe go mainstream with those technologies. And with that mindset, basically we have, I would say, more than 10,000 use cases across hundreds of industries wherein blockchain is being utilized for solving many real world problems, where we need trust, confidence, security, and flexibility to carry out the business, day-to-day business, what we are doing, and maybe transitioning it from maybe a traditional business to more digital business. That's where I'm seeing a lot of opportunities coming into picture.
Great, Rizwan. On the same lines, when people are situated remotely, out of your experience, like you referred some use cases, there are hundreds of thousands of use cases. So can you refer us a couple of use cases or case studies which you would like to highlight the use of? See, we are entrepreneurs, we are not technical people. So how for our business, we can utilize blockchain? Any use case if you can share for the entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. I think there are many use cases which are out there, but one of the prominent thing which we see in India, right, is if we need to do business between each other, we need to have some kind of contracts in place. So generally, what we see is we have traditional contracts wherein I'll sign maybe an agreement or a document with the person, which is going to be a paper-based contract. But looking at how the digital boundaries are bringing all the different countries together, all the different businesses together, people are going away from this traditional way of doing contracts, and people are trying to create smart contracts, which is basically possible using blockchain technology. And if you use these smart contracts, this helps you in improving the transparency, accountability, as well as any kind of transfer of resources what you do, right? And this smart contracts basically combine all the different protocols which are out there, which are based on blockchain technology, and it provides very easy to use user interfaces. Again, using these interfaces, we can create secure relationships over the public network, which is what blockchain is about, to create trust between different businesses. So that is one way wherein everyone is trying to adopt maybe digital relationship utilizing smart contracts. And even I have personally worked on many such projects wherein we have helped our clients build such systems wherein we are building the smart contracts for them, which reduces mental and computational and transactional cost for them. And again, third parties can interact with each other very easily using this platform. And again, what we have done in some of our use cases, we have also utilized combination of other emerging technologies like machine learning and data science, wherein using the open blockchain technologies what we have tried to brought in a lot of automation, so that when the transaction processing is happening, we could basically lower the human involvement which goes into contract management. And that is what one of the unique things what we were able to achieve using combination of these technologies. Apart from that, I have personally seen blockchain technology being utilized in hospitals, wherein we need to maintain some kind of healthcare value chain and share the patient information, which we call it as electronic patient health information, across different entities, which could be hospitals, care providers, right? And this needs to be done with a lot of security compliance in place. And that's where we need to ensure that we have a proper privacy in place, data security in place, integrity in place. So we have worked on various use cases wherein we have utilized blockchain technology to maybe do this in a way which is going to be more secure and accessible to all the people. And again, one other use case which I'm generally seeing outside is, and this is already happening as we are going through this pandemic, even from the point of vaccine is getting manufactured at the manufacturer's pharma company's facility, till the time it is not administered to particular person who is getting vaccinated, we can completely maintain the end-to-end cycle using blockchain technology, wherein we can actually see the the tracking of the vaccine from the point where it got manufactured, where it got delivered, and more importantly, how it is getting basically utilized for particular patient and things like that. And there are many such use cases which is into supply chain, wherein even you can prevent counterfeiting, wherein generally this is a huge market wherein big brands, they suffer huge losses. So if something is getting manufactured in a big factory, and we are utilizing blockchain technology and along with other emerging technologies, we can ensure that there are no counterfeit products which are coming into market because of that. And there are many more use cases. Even the startups like Open Bazaar, who are developing decentralized blockchain utilities wherein they're connecting buyers and sellers together, wherein no middleman is involved. So directly buyers and sellers can do operation of their business on an open source peer-to-peer network, offering merchant no fees and no restrictions on what they want to sell. So there are huge use cases which are out there in terms of how blockchain technology is being utilized day to day. Even there are IT companies who are specializing in this, and they're providing a service called as blockchain as a service, wherein you go into cloud, and if you need to deploy a solution, instead of you are required to developing a solution from scratch or doing certain integrations from scratch, you get most of the things out of box. And that's where blockchain is becoming more mainstream, and there are multitude of application and industries where it is getting maybe implemented. So I feel we are going to be having huge demand as far as blockchain technology is going to be considered in a lot of different areas. But two prominent areas, if I need to highlight, and that is something we can talk more further, is D apps. We call it as distributed apps, and another one is DeFi, which is called as distributed finance. This is where a lot of opportunities are there. A lot of people are coming up with different solutions, different applications using which they are creating these apps so that we are able to maybe utilize blockchain technology and maybe solve the real world problems.
Great, Rizwan. I know you can speak on certain other aspects as well, but it's good that we got some great insights from you, and the entrepreneurship community can take the benefit of this open source blockchain technology and strengthen their business processes and scale their business to a greater extent using blockchain. Thank you so much. My colleague Ranjana will come back to you with some more questions after some time. Now we are also eager to listen to Arsh Shah, and I hand over to Saurabh Mehta, President TiE Ahmedabad. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thank you, Nitin. And it was great hearing you, Rizwan. You've given us a practical. Now we go to the exciting part. And I think Arsh has a few things there. And my relation with Arsh goes back, I think, 25 years, 26 years. So I've known him since while he was in school. So, and I've seen him grow, and I've seen him, and he's a great programmer. I'm also a programmer, so I can understand that. So with that, Arsh, why don't you tell us something about yourself, what you're doing, and then I'll take up the questions.
Sure. Thank you, Saurabh, uncle. Sorry to say uncle, but yeah, given that what he said, thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Arsh Shah. I'm a programmer. I build distributed systems, and currently I happen to work on blockchain systems, as a part of which I work on a protocol called Filecoin, which is a blockchain-based decentralized data storage solution that is aiming to build a new scalable, decentralized, powerful internet. So we're basically inventing a new internet. And I've been working on this since a couple of years. And I've been working in blockchain since 2017. If you remember, the boom happened in 2017, and the Gujarati in me is like, boss, I'm not in the right field. I need to be here. And that is when I decided to switch my career from traditional banking, where I was working in Morgan Stanley, and moved to writing code for blockchains and decentralized systems. So yeah, I don't have any of the practical experience that Dr. Rizwan has. I'm 28 years old. So whatever I say, please take that into consideration and judge for yourself. Thank you.
Okay, I think that brief introduction will do. I think the technology itself is not very old. So I think this is a young people technology, and the coder people who actually build from the ground up are very, very young. And well, you don't see me building this thing up. I wouldn't even know or try it. But yeah, so I think in this entire technology, everybody's very young. So actually should not feel like, you are young and you don't have enough experience. I think not too many people, like Rizwan said, it's only Satoshi Satoshi inverted commas put out his paper in 2008. And if somebody had offered me a Bitcoin in 2011 for 1 cent, I wouldn't have bought it. Right. So even if I'd bought it, I would be sponsoring the entire TiE for TiE India or whatever it is. So anyway, so basically the idea is everybody's young. So, but you have a lot of experience, and you have dealt across various organizations on blockchain. So why blockchain? Can you give some couple of examples, like the concrete problem which you have worked upon and solved using blockchain? As a coder.
Yeah, that's a great question. So why blockchain? Basically, what blockchain does is it allows you to replace trust in an intermediary to execute a transaction with trust in math, cryptography, and algorithms to execute the same transaction with a counterparty and throw away the bottleneck created by intermediaries. And that bottleneck could be transaction cost, it could be corruption, etc., etc. This is the fundamental innovation, is that it allows a group of humans, a group of participants, a group of actors to execute transactions among themselves without a broker, without an intermediary, without a dalal sitting in the middle to get them to execute those transactions with each other. And this is the main invention that Satoshi Nakamoto gave to the world in 2008. And everything from there on has been built on this core principle or core use case. Now, for example, say I want to transfer $10 to Dr. Rizwan. What I have to do is I'll have to go to this group of humans who call themselves HDFC and say, here's my $10, please keep it with you, and yeah, transfer it to Dr. Rizwan. And what happens now is that the value that I created for myself is locked into the database of this group of humans called HDFC, who can, and then you don't own the money anymore. That money is now locked into their database. They just allow you to access that database because the government has asked them to do so. And then when I transfer $10 to Dr. Rizwan, HDFC will talk to its friend called ICICI, which is another group of humans, and say, hey, here's $10. Let's update our databases. So you add $10 to Dr. Rizwan's account. I'll subtract $10 from Arsh's account, and somehow this financial system works, and all banks in the world, starting from Fed to RBI to Nigerian Central Bank, ICICI, PNC, agree that Dr. Rizwan is 10 rupees richer and Arsh is 10 rupees poorer. And this is a great magical system. If you think about it, it works when it works until, say, a guy, let's call him a fictitious guy called Mr. Mehul Choksi. He goes to ICICI and says, hey, you control the database, right? Let's do one thing. Why don't you transfer some of that money from Dr. Rizwan's account to my account? I'll give you a percentage for it. And ICICI, the group of human called ICICI, the guy sitting in the Candy Bridge branch will say, oh, sure, why not? I have this power over this database. Even though it's Dr. Rizwan's data that's locked into that database, let me give it some of that to you. This is screwed up. Or maybe a fictitious bank called Yes Bank will be like, you can't withdraw any more than $25,000 from your account because, sorry, we spent it all on Dr. Kapoor's house or jets, and etc., etc. So the problem is, in order to transfer some value that I've created to you, I need to go via this intermediary that I do not trust, but I've been asked to trust by the government. And there is supposed to be some punishment for not obeying this contract of transfer that money as it is or safe keep it. But that punishment takes a long time to come because it's not done by algorithms or math or cryptography, but by humans. And, there are bottlenecks to humans acting as intermediaries. So this example that I just gave you is called Bitcoin. You might have heard of it. It is peer-to-peer decentralized money that removes the need for a bank to facilitate transaction of value between humans and who have created that value in the first place. One more example that I can give you, quick one, is what I'm working on. It's called Filecoin. It's a decentralized data storage solution. And the idea is this. Right now, if you want to say build your own website, right? What you would have to do is you would have to put the data that your website is supposed to serve on a platform like AWS, on a platform like Microsoft Cloud, on a platform like Akamai CDN, etc. And you would trust this group of humans to then serve that data to others when they ask for it in exchange for giving them money. The problem again is you trust them to do it correctly, and if they don't do it, there's supposed to be punishment in terms of going to court, breaking the SLA, paying like penalties, etc. And the problem then that happens then is, for example, let's say I create a tweet that is my content, right? I am the creator of that content, and I put it on this platform called Twitter. And once I put it there, I'm not the guy who owns that tweet or that data, even though I created it. It is Twitter that owns it because that data is locked up in Twitter's servers. And then Twitter can say, hey, you know what? I don't agree with your political views. I'm not going to show your tweets to the world anymore. And just like that, data that I had created and wanted to share with the world is now not like somebody else owns it, and they've decided that we don't want to show this to the world. So if you think of it really, Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, AWS, they're all intermediaries wherein they the transaction there is that there is the data that I've created and I want to share it with the world. And I need to trust them to do their job right. There's no, this trust is again in a group of humans and a CEO sitting somewhere in SF. It's not in math, crypto, and algorithms. So what we are doing now is we have created this decentralized network of storage providers all across the world. And I will pay you a token called Filecoin to store some data with you. And then whenever somebody comes and asks for the data, you're supposed to serve it. And you have to prove to the network constantly that you're storing the data as expected and that you're serving it to whoever asked for it. And this proof is again backed by mathematics, algorithms, and crypto. And therefore, if you don't do your job right, there'll be immediate penalties in terms of tokens that you will have to pay to the network. So there's no courts you have to go to and wait for 10 years to like, make the other guy pay the penalty. There's no big guy saying, I'm not going to serve your data. And the data is not locked into the server of a big company which controls this transaction of data between people. It's locked in storage provider, you now store it in storage providers all across the world. So you have this nice replication of data. So if one guy goes rogue, one guy goes down, there's always someone else. And the other beautiful thing that comes out of it really is if you look at the current internet, right, it's heavily centralized. Most of the data that, for example, the Zoom meeting we're having right now, the exchange of this video stream, it probably goes via some data center or CDN sitting in Singapore or SF or Europe. And that one computer is supposed to serve these requests among humans all across the world. Instead of that, it would be great if we could have hyper localized data delivery in terms of some guy in Ahmedabad, some enterprise in Gujarati could create his own data center in Ahmedabad and hyper localized content saying for Zoom meetings between people in Ahmedabad, I will serve your data, Mr. Zoom. Why don't you pay me? So Zoom can pay the guy in Ahmedabad to stream meetings between people in Ahmedabad, which would be a nice hyper-localized, decentralized internet, which is what the internet was supposed to be in the first place until it got taken over by big companies. And what blockchain does here is, as I explained, allow you to store this data without trusting the other person to retrieve it, to serve retrieval for that data when asked to, and to store it correctly for the agreed period of time without censoring it, etc. And if the other guy doesn't fulfill his part of the contract, there'll be actual punishment enforced by this network or this algorithm in terms of real money. I hope that was a good summary of what blockchain is.
Yeah, Ash, I think you give a good summary and good idea. And as we can all see that you're very passionate about what you're doing, and it shows in your actions. So I think the next question is going to be really something which everybody is very interested. Is basically what are crypto tokens, ICOs or whatever you call them, and how you buy, sell, store, and use crypto tokens safely. Because there are so many cryptocurrencies out there, which is legal and which is fake, and there's so much of a confusion. And tomorrow we can start a TAI coin also, and then start launching it in the market, and then push it around and say anybody who wants to become a member of TAI can use the TAI coin kind of thing. So yeah, tell us more about what are crypto tokens, how to buy and sell, Dogecoin, blah blah blah, etc. Okay, so it would be very interesting, and keep it less technical. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. A disclaimer: none of the comments that I will make from here on have anything to do with price movements. They're just meant to explain what crypto tokens are, what they mean, what due diligence you could do if you decide to invest on it, not speculate, how to go about doing that due diligence, how to store those tokens, etc. Because I myself do not understand price movements. So here's what a crypto token is, right? It could mean multiple things depending on which token we are talking about. So for example, Bitcoin is a crypto token, meaning that it's a token generated by a code running on a computer that's doing cryptography. There's no physical manifestation of Bitcoin. It's not like gold. You can't touch it. It exists on the internet. It's bits and bytes sitting on a computer. So Bitcoin is bits and bytes sitting on a computer, which we humans have agreed is money, is digital gold. We humans have agreed that crypto token called Bitcoin has value And if I give you some Bitcoin, you could give me some dollars because I believe Bitcoin is better than dollars and you believe otherwise. But so Bitcoin is a crypto token that we have all agreed is like money or digital gold because it's scarce. That's Bitcoin. Now, for example, something called Filecoin, the network that I'm working on that I just talked about. Filecoin, this crypto token, this bits and bytes sitting on a group of computers, gives you the right to go to a storage provider who is running the same service. It gives you the right to go to the storage provider, give the storage provider that crypto token, and store some data on that storage provider. So Filecoin is the currency of the Filecoin network, which is this network of storage providers and storage clients that I just explained. So when you own Filecoin, what you are basically owning is, think of it as an option. You know, you have these options as a financial instrument. Think of it as an option that you can exercise at any time to store data on the network. And the value of that crypto token called Filecoin comes from the fact that in the future, there will be a lot more demand to store data on this Filecoin network because people have decided decentralized internet is better than a centralized internet. So they will want to store a lot of data on this network. And for that, they will need Filecoin. And the demand for Filecoin will push up the price of this token called Filecoin in terms of USD, which is just another token, which has a physical manifestation and is printed by a guy sitting in Washington. So Filecoin, for example, we call it a utility token, meaning it has some utility. You can give it to someone and get a service on that network. This is what a crypto token is. Either it's like Bitcoin, where we all agreed that it's valuable because it's valuable, just like gold. We all agreed it's valuable because it's scarce. Or it's something like Filecoin, where you can actually go to a network and say, hey, here's the Filecoin, give me some service. In this case, the service is allow me to store some data on you. So these are crypto tokens. Coming to how you can buy and sell them, you can go to an exchange. Just like, you have stock exchanges where I have some stock, you have some money, I give you the stock, you give me the money, and the exchange facilitates the transaction between the two of us. So just like that, unfortunately, we have centralized exchanges for a decentralized thing called crypto, even though decentralized exchanges are being built, but that's a bit down the road. So you can go to this exchange in India. I think we have exchanges called WazirX and ZepPay. Those are the two that I'm aware of. You can go there, deposit some INR, Indian government's token, and you can give it to someone and the other guy will give you Filecoin or Bitcoin or whatever coin you want to buy. So in terms of the value proposition, Bitcoin, like I said, is digital gold. So you can give it whatever value you give it to gold, for example. Filecoin, when you buy Filecoin, you're speculating that in the future, the demand for storage on their decentralized network will be a lot more than it is today. And you're hoping that people will give you more money for it in the future if you decide to speculate. So that's the value proposition for each token. And yeah, as I just said, you need to do your due diligence before buying any of these tokens, because it's really the same as stocks, where we have Harshad Mehta's in the cryptocurrency market too, and a lot of them, in fact, given that it's a bull market. So it's very easy to end up buying tokens called CumRocket and SafeMoon and God knows what else is out there, which is basically like a pump and dump scheme. Like three friends get together, create their own token, sell it to you at a high price, then disappear. And then when you try and go and sell them, you won't find any buyers. So the kind of due diligence you can do, number one is please make sure you understand the real world use case and the tech behind it. You don't have to read the code, but you can understand, okay, this is what Filecoin is supposed to do. Don't buy tokens that are valuable just because someone else thinks so. Buy tokens with real utility. So this is what the coin is supposed to do. This is every crypto token has a team of engineers behind it, just like a startup. So look up the background of all those engineers, look up their work experience. And in the crypto community, all the code we produce is open source. Basically, the code that I write today, it's there on the internet for free for everyone to see. Okay, that's called open source code. And that's like the ethos of cryptocurrency, where, hey, whatever we write is there on the internet for everyone to see, so they can audit themselves that this works as it's supposed to work. So if you are a technical person, or if you can hire a technical person to go look at the code and say, oh, code looks good, it's actually pretty good, development of this is going fast. etc., etc. So please do all these due diligence. Otherwise, you'll end up buying a coin that is probably worthless in 6 months or 1 year. 80 to 90% of the coins that I saw in 2017 when I started my career in blockchain have disappeared today. So yeah, you can go to WazirX, buy, deposit money, buy these tokens. And in terms of how to store them, this is probably one of the most important points I want to make in the call today. So if you don't go away with anything else, please go away with this. In the blockchain community, we have a saying called not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Basically, this is a decentralized network, right? There's no HDFC or government to say, okay, Arsh, you are the owner of this money. It's all anonymous. It's all decentralized. There's no one to go to when things go bad. Okay, there's no babysitter coming to save you if you lose your Bitcoin or your Filecoin or whatever. So basically, ownership of token on this chain is governed by something called a private key. Think of it as 256 ones and zeros after each other. That's it. So you can take a coin today, toss it 256 times. If it's a heads, it's a 1. If it's a tails, it's a 0. Write it down on a piece of paper. That's your private key. And you can say, okay, Bitcoin network, I'm creating an account on this network with this private key. Think of it as your net banking ID and password, right? And then anyone who has that private key can go to the network, send your money to someone else. Like there's no KYC on the Bitcoin network. There's no Aadhaar. There's nothing. This will be just this 256, and it's 202 raised to 256 combinations if you think about it. So that's it's an astronomical number. Like human brain can't even comprehend it. So there'll never be a duplicates when two people toss that coin 256 times. So don't worry about that. So now when you buy crypto on an exchange and you keep it on an exchange, you are not the person who owns that crypto, it's the exchange. Please keep that in mind. If you want to speculate on the price movement, it's okay. Keep it on the exchange, but there are a lot of exchanges have disappeared. Like you can look up Mt. Gox, which just said that they had been hacked and just went away with all the Bitcoin that was on Mt. Gox. It's an exchange. So what you would want to do is own your own private key. Just Google how to run a software wallet, how to run a hardware wallet. I'm happy to do follow-up sessions later to take you through how to do all this if you get interested. So you need to have your own hardware wallet, which is basically a pen drive, which disconnected from the internet, which knows these 256 letter strong sequence of ones and zeros. So whenever I want to send Bitcoin to Saurabh Uncle, for example, I'll connect that pen drive to my computer, say, okay, send Bitcoin, remove the pen drive from my computer. So then it's unhackable. And this pen drive, if you lose it, no problem. There's a 24, there's a list of 24 words that's generated by this pen drive. When you buy it, just keep it in your locker, under your tiles, wherever we keep the cash. So if you lose your pen drive, you can buy a new pen drive and initialize it with this 24 words. But all that you can find on Google. My main message to is, if you believe in the long-term potential of crypto and want to own it for the long term, please don't keep it on an exchange, because these exchanges are heavily unregulated, unlike NSE or BSE. They can disappear tomorrow without much consequences, but you lose your hard-earned Bitcoin or Filecoin.
Great. So basically what we understand is you have to be very clear what token you are using and what is the value of the token in the real world and how many people are using it, and basically keep it to one of the decentralized servers and not on the exchange. And when you want to only sell it, you can take it to the exchange to be sold or something. Correct? And lastly, keep it short, but let's keep it a little bit short. But there are certain places where real world problems they should not be used. If you can keep it, there's a few ideas where you cannot use blockchain in the real world, but people are trying to use blockchain, or just making it hyping it that you can use blockchain.
Sure. Please take my following answer with a pinch of salt, because I'm a heavy believer in the fact that only public blockchains have value. Private blockchains do not have value, but I reserve the right to be wrong. I'm just expressing my worldview and opinion here. Basically, the idea is to remove trust in a centralized intermediary and allow anyone across the world who's willing to run this code to read and write to that database. So then, and really what blockchain is, if you think about it, it's a very slow database. If a Bitcoin transaction takes 30 minutes to to confirm, right? So think of it as a database that takes 30 minutes to do one update. Why the hell would you want to use this in a private setting where there's already trust between a JPMC, Goldman, a Morgan? I mean, these guys are basically all the same people. So my experience so far in my short blockchain career of 4 years is that it private blockchains by and large good look on PPTs made by consulting companies or startups that might be looking to raise funds, but I have yet to understand the value proposition. But maybe I'm coming from ignorance here and I reserve the right to be wrong, but I have yet to see a solid real world use case of a private blockchain, which is basically a database where only a select group of people is allowed to read and write. Why wouldn't you then just run a normal database and share the ID and password with everyone who wants to read and write to it? It's not a blockchain. It's not a decentralized network. But this is my opinion.
And obviously, you cannot use it on the dark web, and you should not use it on dark web and the cryptos and all that. Anyway, that's a different story. That's a different topic altogether. I think what we will do is, I think we have got enough gyan about blockchain, crypto, etc. And I think now I will thank you, Ash, for all the knowledge you have given us and the ideas. And now I will ask Ranjana to take up the user questions. If there are some user questions I see. And Ranjana, President TiE Coimbatore, over to you.
Thanks, Saurabh. First of all, if my camera is troubling me quite a lot.
I thought as much. You're going on and off.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like troubling me. So if it goes off again, please ignore and apologies for the same. Thank you, Dr. Rizwan and Arsh. That was quite an insight. You know, I really had to pay attention to what you were talking about. Lots to absorb. I'm sure the audience also must have had a lot of takeaways today. I have a couple of questions with me. This is for you, Dr. Rizwan. What is DeFi concept? Can you please elaborate?
Okay, so DeFi, if I need to maybe take the acronym, right, it stands for decentralized finance. And what we are trying to do, as we heard Arsh say, right, if in a traditional setting, right, if I need to make payment from my account to his account, right, so I need to have an intermediary coming into picture, like bank, who needs to maintain that database for me, right? How much money I have in my account, right? And if I'm making a transaction, it needs to go from my account to his account. So what DeFi is trying to do is we are trying to remove the intermediaries like banks, right? And trying to come up with our own set of system, which is going to be decentralized as we just discussed so far, right? So what we are trying to do in DeFi is basically we are trying to create a blockchain based finance system, which is not going to have any intermediaries in place like brokerages, exchanges, or banks, which we generally have in the traditional banking. And we are trying to come up with some kind of smart contracts, right, using DeFi protocols, which are built using a variety of open source blockchain technology algorithms, so that we can involve different programmers and developers together, right? And the aim here is using this DeFi applications, we should be able to lend cryptocurrencies to one another. So I have cryptocurrency in my account, and if you want to maybe borrow cryptocurrency from me, so I should be able to do that from my account to your account without any traditional bank being involved. So generally, if there is a bank involved, right, you know, there is a processing fee involved, which bank charges. There are at times huge interest rates which comes into picture and things like that. But generally, if you build a DeFi-based application, the interest rate is not going to be like what we see in the traditional banking system. More importantly, there is some kind of mortgage or eligibility criteria which comes into picture, right? If we talk about traditional banking, so at times borrowers here could be little not that they don't have stringent requirements, right, in terms of borrowing, right? Because you're trying to create a mutual trust where when somebody is lending to you. There could be many more applications around DeFi, wherein you can have a decentralized exchange which could act as a liquidity provider to your crypto assets and things like that. And again, here interest rate, as I said, could be more attractive for the people who are borrowing and things like that. So this basically removes that barrier which is there, right, in the traditional banking, wherein people can't maybe borrow money that easily, right? Because there are huge fees involved, huge interest are there, you have a lot of collateral and other things which come into picture. Again, a lot of new things which are also coming into picture. I think Arsh also gave an example, right, wherein we have, say, suppose intermediaries like Twitter and Facebook into picture, right? And if I'm tweeting or maybe putting my Facebook post online, so they can maintain a timestamp, right? And if I'm a celebrity, so you have a concept called as NFT, non-fungible tokens, and people can basically own those digital assets online, and they can be also traded and collateral. I can present that as a collateral, right, using the DeFi protocol and things like that. So a lot of innovation is happening that side. So in simplest term, we are trying to improve our lending and borrowing experience without any kind of intermediaries like banks, brokerages, and other people. And a lot of new use cases are coming, and a lot of startups are doing some good work, even in India, around this.
But in continuation to that, what happens to this due diligence, which is like done by these intermediaries? What do you do about that then?
So I think that's a very good question. Generally, what some of the maybe startups in India who are trying to build some of these applications. So they have built their own KYC platform. So we are utilizing blockchain, but at the same time, we are doing some kind of personal KYC so that that could be done. At the same time, if I need to borrow from traditional banks, there is some kind of credit rating for me, which is available, and there are 2-3 big providers which are out there who are doing that credit rating for all the borrowers. So similar concepts are being brought into DeFi, wherein either I can interface with the existing credit rating agencies, or maybe I can come up with my own solution around this. There's some innovative startups even in India who are utilizing even blockchain technologies to even come up with their own credit rating system, which is also coming into picture when they are trying to build such systems.
Thanks, Dr. Rizwan. My next question to you, Arsh. You're very young. It's very interesting to see your interest in blockchain and cryptocurrency. I have another question for you. How many players are there that are currently working with blockchain in India?
Sure. I can tell you the ones that I know of. I'm sure there are more than the ones that I know of. But it depends on what you call working with blockchain. If you think of an exchange as working with blockchain, which I don't, because what an exchange is basically doing is facilitating this transaction between two people who happen to own crypto tokens. Then there's WazirX, there's CoinDCX, there's ZapPay, etc. But one that I heard is of good repute is called Polygon or Matic Network, which is based out of Bangalore. They have their own crypto token called Polygon, and what they are basically trying to do is there's a blockchain called Ethereum, which you might have heard of. Yeah. And the problem, it does what it does. It's a decentralized computation platform, just like Bitcoin is decentralized money and Filecoin is decentralized storage, Ethereum is decentralized computation. The problem again is same problem that all blockchains have, is it's slow. It doesn't scale. And what Polygon is trying to do is build the tech and build the platform on top of Ethereum that makes Ethereum fast. I have personally never used that code because I'm more into decentralized storage than computation, but some people that I really respect and trust tell me that they're doing really good stuff. So do check them out. They're headquartered in Bangalore, and I'm personally proud that it's a very reputable company in the blockchain community that's India based, and basically all the founders are Indians. The CEO, the CTO, etc. So yeah, these are the players that I personally like and respect in India.
So in continuation to that, tell me something which blockchain is usually associated with high energy cost and therefore not a very green alternative. Is this changing? What is your opinion on it?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, and which Mr. Musk has made popular in recent times. Look, the internet was invented in 1983. HTTP, which is the web, which is what we use today, was invented in 1991. Google came across in 96, Facebook in 2004, TikTok in 2014. So if you really think about it, it took Facebook 20 years to come up after the invention of the internet, right? Blockchain is still just 13 years old. Mm-hmm. The solutions that we have today are energy intensive. Yeah. But a lot of very smart people from very, very high motivated people are now looking for solutions to make this less energy intensive. There's already a lot of blockchains out there like Filecoin, for example, which don't waste electricity to secure the blockchain. the resource they waste. Basically, the work these blockchains do is useful to the network. So for example, in Filecoin, you have to give it a lot, like the more storage you give to the network, the more say you have in the network. And in Bitcoin, you get that more say by burning electricity. But in Filecoin, you get that more say by giving storage, which is great because people can actually store data on the storage you are contributing. But yeah, anyways, my larger point is it is a problem today. Let's look for solutions together because this is a great tech for society to have. And whenever you judge that, hey, Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity, I would urge you to consider all the electricity consumed by banks across the world with the CEOs in their private jets and the private yachts, and please compare it against that.
Got it, Arsh. I have a question for you, Dr. Rizwan. How to identify which cryptocurrency is legal and which is fake? And there are many cryptocurrencies are launched.
I think that's a,
Did you hear me?
yes, I heard you partially, but if you can maybe say last part of your question one more time.
For me, is actually how to identify which cryptocurrency is legal and which is fake. As there are many cryptocurrencies in the market, how do you recognize that? For a person like me, how do you recognize?
I think that's a very good and valid question. So cryptocurrencies, I would say if you look at how the trading is happening these days, right? And there are like almost more than 5,000 plus types of cryptocurrencies which are being traded worldwide, and that number is going up. A lot of people are coming up with newer cryptocurrencies, right? So it's a very, very pertinent question. A lot of people ask me this question. So one thing we all need to remember is since we all are in India, Indian government is still exploring what should be the crypto regulation in India. There is no formal legal process which has been put in place as far as country like India is concerned. But cryptocurrencies are not illegal as far as India goes. We can buy, sell and trade cryptocurrencies. Only it is unregulated as on today. So with that in mind, so we also heard or saying or talking about ICOs, right? So there are like a lot of initial coin offerings which come into picture, which could be fraudulent in nature. So generally, whenever you come across a new cryptocurrency which you have not heard, so what you should do is you should look at who is the team behind that cryptocurrency. In a way, you should look at who the founding team is, what kind of credentials they bring in, look at their past, right, in terms of their LinkedIn profile, what kind of companies they have formed in past and things like that. So that should be the first check. If you think the founders are not having any legitimate background, that is a big red flag. Second thing what we should look at is any ICO or a new cryptocurrency, whenever it is coming in, they need to create some kind of a white paper. We call it as a foundation document for their project. So you need to carefully look at that white paper in a way, what they're trying to achieve, right, in terms of their new cryptocurrency offering. And you should study that. So if you see some language, right, which is not right, if you see some typos, some grammatical mistakes, right, so that shows you that at times they might not be legitimate, right, in a way they might be doing some kind of copy paste work or something like that. So that could be the second thing we should look at. Second thing is we should also look at the token or the currency system which is there, right, in their crowdfunding process. So in most cases, these legitimate companies, right, will make their system in such a way that the potential investors who are buying their currencies, right, it is going to be easy for them to buy the tokens, as well as it should be easy for them to sell their tokens, right, and maintain their wallets and things like that. If you see anything which is not in line with maybe there is ease of use to buy the currency, right, but if you're locked in, right, you're not able to sell your tokens or sell your currencies, right, so that is something again which we need to look at very, very carefully. So these are some of the high level pointers, but as I said initially, right, you need to be extremely cautious whenever you're doing new investments. Always keep looking for maybe all the aspects which I just said, right. Don't go by speculative investment. Maybe generally people try to get rich very quickly, right, and based on maybe fake promises that you'll get quick money, right? And maybe at times people feel that they might be left out in terms of if they don't invest quickly and things like that. So look at the maybe risk proposition, and at the same time, more importantly, talk to seasoned investors, right, who are into crypto investments all the time, right, and take their advice initially, and try to maybe do it collectively instead of doing in isolation. That's going to be my high level advice, so that we are not falling prey to any kind of scams and maybe get duped into this cryptocurrency rackets.
Dr. Sorry.
Yeah, Ranjana, I just wanted to bring to your attention, there are a couple of questions on the
I know,
chat box as well.
Completely understand. Just one last question and then over to you, Piali, because there are, I think, a lot of questions in the chat box also.
Yes, and we are already 5 minutes past our time. So
briefly, just wanted to ask you, Dr. Rizwan, what do you think, what age group is investing into cryptocurrency? Do you think the younger generation, what do you think, traditional investment, what people are looking into, or we are going ahead with the high risk investment? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think demographics is difficult to give, but as far as India is concerned, as much as I know, most of the youngsters be in their 30s are the early investors, because there is a lot of good momentum, right? If you look at cryptocurrencies, people are following like big entrepreneurs like Musk, right, and his announcements and things like that. So a lot of people are maybe coming forward and they want to experiment in this new way of investing. But traditional investors also slowly are looking at this as an option. But most of the people are youngsters, right? As much as I know.
Thanks, Dr. Rizwan. Thank you, Arsh. Over to you, Priyali. There are multiple.
Yes, there are.
Yes.
I'll probably take a couple of them, unless probably it's already covered. So one I have here from Mr. Arun Kumar. He says that he is working towards creating a platform business with varied, discrete customer segments. Will it be a good idea to use blockchain technology for this community building? I'll leave it open for our speakers, one of you to respond.
Yeah, I'll go first and maybe Arsh can add to it, right? So one thing we need to understand, and maybe Arsh touched on this, right? There are two types of blockchain solutions. One is called as public blockchain and second one is private blockchain. So public blockchain is something which everyone can access, right? Basically, they could see what the transactions are, what data is getting maybe exchange and things like that. And second one is private blockchain, which is just limited to certain users or maybe certain companies, right, who are just transacting with each other. So based on the use case, what I've heard, you may need to first look at whether it is a public blockchain or a private blockchain. And depending upon that, right, you can make a decision in terms of your use case, right, whether you can go for it. As you heard even Arsh say previously, there are a lot of advantages when you go for blockchain, but at the same time, you have a lot of disadvantages when you use blockchain technology. So before you decide to use the blockchain technology in your particular use case, you need to do the complete need analysis, right? In a way, you need to look at whether there is actual need, whether the blockchain technology, how it functions. It could be something which could be applied for that use case. And ideally, you should create a POC first and then go for the bigger deployment. So that is my general input on that.
Should I take the next question that maybe Arsh can sort of highlight that one? This one is from Dr. Mukund. So he is asking, what are the common databases used? He says he means that are there any specific databases for blockchain?
Sure, Dr. Mukund. So blockchains don't really need SQL. So we don't use any RDBMS databases like on all these computers that are running this network. We usually use like high speed key value data stores like BadgerDB, or for example, Filecoin uses BadgerDB, Bitcoin uses LevelDB, and each of these has its own trade-offs in terms of space usage, write speed, read speed, etc. So depending on the problem that the blockchain is trying to solve and the read-write pattern there, you need to zero down on one of these key value stores.
Arsh, there's a question for you from Mr. Nilesh Dattani. I don't know if you could quickly touch upon it. How does blockchain compare and contrast with the current API structure around software linkages between banks and other third-party fintech platforms, creating the bridge between banks and fintech software integrations, thereby allowing free flow of data between them with customer consent.
Yeah, Mr. Dattani, that's the point. Think of the complexity that it took you to just write that question, which shows you how complex that financial and how brittle and complex this financial system is. And it doesn't have to be this way, right? Just join the Bitcoin network, toss a coin 256 times, join it, and then off you go. Like on the internet, you can send that money to anyone in 30 minutes, throw out all these banks and these APIs and these bridges and whatnot, and it's a decentralized network where you don't have to trust anyone for it to work, right? I mean, if Paytm, I've seen people, if Paytm doesn't do your transaction for 24 hours, you have to call customer service, I don't know what, but for Bitcoin, you don't have to call anyone, it works, it's math, right? So, but that's my biased opinion for public blockchains.
So, thanks, Sash. I think there aren't any other different questions which has not been covered. So, and since we're already 10 minutes past our time, over to you, Nidhi.
Thanks, Sally. So, thank you so much, our eminent speakers, Dr. Rizwan Ahmed and Arsha, for the wonderful and valuable insight on the topic. We thank our presidents, Mr. Nitin Sachdeva, Mr. Saurabh Mehta, and Ms. Ranjana Singhal for the wonderful moderation and your support. We also thank dear participants, charter members, associate members across chapters for joining today's session. So the very basic question, the recordings will be available at the respective chapters YouTube handle. So you can see them shortly. And thank you so much everyone for joining today's session.
Thank you, Piali. Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Nidhi.
Thank you, everyone. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us.
Everybody, yes. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everyone. Special thanks to Saurabh for his initiative for today's topic.